Long before the famous town Cooley, there was the young maid Aife, the woman CúChulainn loved. When he wooed her, her father Forgall wasn't happy with his daughter's choice. He wanted to dispose of CúChulainn, and so he teased him, sending him on his way to the legendary warrior Queen Scathach, to receive the best warrior's training he could possibly get. Forgall's intention was not to strengthen CúChulainn, but for him to die along the way, or at least to be away long enough that he could wed his daughter to someone more suitable. But this strategy didn't work out as planned, as you can see in the story of the wooing of Aife. But today's episode is not about CúChulainn's love for Aife, but about the challenges and trials he faced in his pursuit for glory as a warrior. When CúChulainn decided to go to Scathach to train under the best teacher there is, two of his friends from the Red Branch, King Croa's famous army, decided to join him. Their names were Bricriu and Scathach. The trio made their way north, across the Irish Sea, to Alba, Scotland. But as soon as they arrived on its shores, Bricriu and Scathach were plagued by a vision, sent by Forgall, Aime's father. The vision showed them Aime's marker, and made them homesick for their native land. And the longer they were plagued by the vision, the less they could bear being parted from Ireland. And so they left CúChulainn, and returned to Ulster just as Forgall had planned. CúChulainn felt betrayed and sad, but he was determined to find Scathach and to get the best warrior's training he could possibly get. He went on his way to Scathach's stronghold, Dún Scath, the Fortress of Shadows, on the Isle of Skye, even though he didn't know the way. After a while, he saw something in the distance. It came closer and closer, until the young warrior saw that it looked like a giant lion. He made himself ready for a possible attack, but the lion, once it was close, just rested. As soon as CúChulainn moved, however, the lion moved too, always in CúChulainn's way, not aggressive, but as a constant blockade. It took a while until CúChulainn understood that the beast meant no harm, but was offering to help him. CúChulainn thanked the lion, leaped onto his back, and off they went. The beast ran across the plains of Scotland, carrying CúChulainn on his back, without ever stopping. After 4 whole days and nights, they came by a lake near some kids. The kids laughed upon the sight of a grown man riding on a beast like this, and so, not able to bear the laughter, CúChulainn dismounted the beast, thanked him, and went on by foot. Some time went by, and the young hero came by a lovely house. He saw a young woman standing by the house, and upon seeing him, she called out to him by his name. CúChulainn was irritated. How did a woman in Alba know his name? It took him a few moments to recognize her as a king's daughter that had stayed with CúChulainn's family when he was younger. Both were delighted to see each other again. The young lady invited him in and made a feast to his honors. They talked for hours about everything that happened since their last meeting, until both of them fell into a deep slumber. Once CúChulainn was rested, she told him what awaited him along his way to Scathach, and then sent him on his merry way. On the way, CúChulainn thought about what she had told him. Forgall had left traps along the way, so that he wouldn't come back to court Aife. It wouldn't be easy to reach Scathach. He first had to cross the plain of misfortune and pass the perilous glen. And even if he managed that, the Bridge of Leaps would still try to kill him. But CúChulainn knew no fear. He was ready for any challenge waiting for him. It took a while until he finally reached the plain of misfortune, a plain covered in porous clay, which, should he decide to cross that path, would make his feet stick and would make it impossible for him to escape. He looked around, but there was only one other path, and that path was overgrown, not by any bush or weed, but by razor-sharp high grass that would slash his legs should he try to go through it. While he still thought about a way to cross the plain, a young rider crossed his path. He was a handsome lad, and CúChulainn felt some kind of weird connection to the stranger. Little did he know that this was Lugh of the Tuatha De Danann, his real father in disguise. The man greeted him, and without revealing his identity, handed him a golden wheel. He advised the young hero to roll the wheel in front of him as a quagmire, so that it would reveal a safe path for him. CúChulainn thanked the stranger, and did as he was told, and before long, he crossed the plain of misfortune and reached the perilous glen. This was the next trap he was warned about. The glen was filled with savage goblins, waiting to devour any wanderers. But CúChulainn, being the warrior he is, crossed the glen without a problem. How many of the goblins survived this journey? Well, nobody knows. At last, he saw Scathach's island in the distance, and found a camp full of young noblemen. They all wanted to train with Scathach, but there was still one challenge to take: the Bridge of Leaps. Many who had tried to cross it had died in the process, for there was a boiling sea underneath it, and the bridge itself was enchanted and didn't want to be crossed. It bounced and changed sizes as it pleased, just to get rid of anyone trying to cross it. The young noblemen in the camp were not able to cross either, and waited for Scathach to find them worthy, even without crossing the bridge. Legend has it that amongst the noblemen he found the sons of Uisnech, who were in exile and on the run with Naois's wife Deirdre. But the story of Deirdre of the Sorrows is a tale for another time. They briefly talked and exchanged pleasantries, until CúChulainn couldn't resist but tried to cross the uncrossable bridge. He ran towards the bridge, ready to cross it in one go. But the bridge turned itself slippery, and before CúChulainn even realized his mistake, he slipped right back to where he had started. The young noblemen laughed at him, for they thought him to be a fool to believe he could do what neither of them was able to do. Again, CúChulainn tried, and again he failed, and for a third time, with the same outcome. He was furious. His father's power fueled his rage, started to set him into his rear stride, his berserker mode, and he ran again towards the bridge, made his famous salmon leap to the half of the bridge, and leaped again, reaching the other side, cooling down, keeping the berserker under control. The nobleman watched in awe. Scathach's daughter watched the event and welcomed the handsome stranger. Impressed by his skills and enchanted by his looks, she wished him to stay for a while, and therefore to become her mother's pupil. And so she told him what he had to do to make his dreams become a reality. She told him to go to the place where Scathach trained her own two sons, and to impress her. And so he did. He found the training court underneath some yew trees, ambushed Scathach, and put a sword to her chest, demanding that she would accept him as a pupil. She readily agreed. CúChulainn was a very good pupil and a quick learner, and soon became Scathach's favorite. He trained alongside his fellow pupils, one of whom was Ferdiad MacDamon, who slowly but surely became Cuchulainn's best friend and companion. Scathach taught him everything she knew about the arts of war, and he learned quicker than any before him, and mastered everything within a single year's time. Seeing how skilled he was and how quick he adapted, Scathach decided to teach him a lesson she never taught anyone before. She gave him the feared gay bog, a mighty spear, which, thrown by foot, was bound to pierce the opponent and burst into thorns throughout the victim's body. A cruel but mighty weapon, which he also mastered in no time, setting him even further apart from his fellow pupils. It so happened that at the time when Cuchulainn was a pupil, Scathach was at war with another warrior queen, a former pupil of hers, and according to legend, her own twin sister, called Aife. Both had raised armies, and none of them was ready to back down. Scathach hadn't mentioned any of this to her pupils, not even to Cuchulainn, for he had become dear to her, and she feared for his life should he decide to attack Aife. When a day came when both armies were about to fight, Scathach slipped a sleeping potion into Cuchulainn's drink, to make sure he wouldn't join the battle. She dosed it in a way that it would put 12 men to slumber for a whole day. But she underestimated Cuchulainn and his father's fairy blood, for even though Cuchulainn fell asleep instantly, he woke up after a mere hour, and hearing the sound of metal clashing together, he went to search for the source of the noise. When he saw what was going on, he armed himself and joined Scathach's 2 sons, who were just about to fight Aife's 3 mightiest warriors. Cuchulainn soon decided to leap over their heads and slew all 3 of Aife's champions, before he joined his fellow warriors to fight against the rest of the army. When Aife heard what had happened to her champions, she screamed in agony. She ran onto the battlefield and challenged Scathach to single combat. But before Scathach could agree, Cuchulainn stepped forward and took her place. Before starting the fight, though, having seen what Aife was able to do, he went to Scathach asking for Aife's weaknesses. Scathach replied that Aife loved nothing more dearly than a prized chariot and horses. Equipped with this information, he was ready to go into battle. A fierce fight broke out, and both warriors seemed to be of near equal strength, when Aife suddenly managed to give Cuchulainn a hard blow. Cuchulainn fell and got up again, finding his sword damaged, but he had no choice but to keep on fighting. But before Aife could attack him again, he cried out in horror that Aife's chariot was just about to fall off the cliffs. Confused, Aife turned around, looking for a prized possession, and this was all Cuchulainn had needed. He used the moment of confusion and seized her, and with her own sword pointing to her throat, she begged for her life. Cuchulainn was ready to let her live, under one condition. She had to grant him 3 wishes. Aife agreed, and told him to name his demands. Firstly, he demanded her to make peace with Scathach and to never attack her again. She agreed, and the sisters were no longer at war. Aife asked for the other demands, and Cuchulainn delivered. He demanded a night at her fort with her, and that she had to bear him a son, his 2nd and 3rd demand. Aife agreed, for she was enchanted by this mighty warrior who was able to defeat her. The 2 warriors became lovers for the rest of the time Cuchulainn trained under Scathach. But the day came that CúChulainn had to leave, to return to his beloved Aimer, and to finally marry her, while Aife would stay in Alba. But before he went home, Aife confessed that she indeed was pregnant with his son. She promised to raise him and to send him to Ulster once he was old enough. CúChulainn was overjoyed and asked her to call the boy Cúailgne. He took a red gold ring from his finger and gave it to Aife. She should raise the boy until he was able to wear the ring without it slipping from his finger, and then sent him to Ulster to find his father. With a feeling of happiness and sadness, he left Alba and went back to Ireland, a greater warrior than he had ever been before. He was ready to find his beloved Aimer, no matter what her father would say, and to make her his wife. And that was the story of CúChulainn's trials. If you like the story, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified when the next episode comes out. See you next time. Slán slán!